Welcome to the Leadership Exchange. Today I am joined by Charles Bligh, who is the Chief Executive of Restore. Welcome, Charles.
Hi, Maggie. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Restore are the UK market leader in document management, commercial relocation and IT cycling. And to give it some sort of sense of scale, it's sort of 2,500 people in the UK. That's right, isn't it, Charles?
That's right, yes.
Okay, so it's all about services to business.
That's correct.
Yeah, great. So today we're going to be reflecting on Charles's experience of leading through this time and how that has forever changed his leadership for the future. But first, Charles, bring to life for us, because many people won't have heard of Restore and deserve to, the 5 intriguing dots in the background there. They look like little dots.
Okay.
Bring those to life for us in terms of the services of Restore, just so that those watching can relate to what your organisation does.
Yeah, well, I'd love to, Maggie. So look, this is Restore is a B2B business. It's not a consumer-based business. As you said, 2,500 people across the UK, turns over sort of well over sort of 210 million pounds of revenue. And we have 5 business units in varying stages of evolution. Our largest business unit is records management. I think big warehouses or mines. We own mines as well, where we're storing records and things of historical importance. Our digital business, which is around digitization of documents and workflow. Our shredding business, shredding paper and recycling, and we became the award for the best recycling business in the UK around paper this year, which is terrific.
Congratulations.
Thank you for the team. And our relocations business, Harrow Green Relocating Companies. And then one of our youngest businesses, which is incredibly exciting, is our technology businesses, where we're the #2 leader in the UK for IT recycling. So really services around the offices.
And who might be a typical customer of yours? Is it a SME? Is it major organizations, global organizations? Is there a typical client?
It's a great question. We're very much spread across all segments. Our shredding business has a number of small, medium enterprises. In records management and digital, it's very much around sort of regulated industries where they value high value storage of things. We're very, very big in public sector, including in our IT recycling business and records management and relocation. So it really is a cross section all the way across from the big FTSE 100 companies, government, central and local, and all the way down to SMEs. And we're a very regional business as well. We have some 75 sites across the UK, as I said, including some mines that we own near Bath as well. So we're an incredibly regional business across the UK.
Great, thank you. And as soon as you say 75 sites, I immediately go to thinking about this year and thinking, oh my goodness, when March came and the world changed, 75 sites, I can immediately feel my brain going into a level of complexity. And I'm wondering, here we are coming into Christmas now at the end of the year, looking back on the year. Yeah, what are you taking from this year? What have you realized during this year or encountered during this year? You can look back and say, goodness me, there's a first. There's some things we needed to face into. What are your reflections in that regard, Charles?
Well, there's other personal reflections, I guess. My own leadership and style, which is, I think we would talk about. I mean, I've very much found that this hasn't been a high performance year, right? I mean, in the end, when things started to really hit in March, most CEOs, I think, in companies were saying, how do I get my company working again? Crisis management. And then as things became maybe a little bit more settled, albeit still uncertain, one of the things for me, I found doing a lot more listening, but also leading in huge ambiguity. It quickly transitioned for us, and I know it's different for each company and industry, but for the first 2 months in March and April, that was more the crisis management, getting, retooling the business, reorienting the business. We had 700 people that needed to work from home, but we've got a very big presence, obviously, in our warehouses and facilities. So once we got through that sort of crisis period and we understood how we could work, and the team did an amazing job delivering for customers. We never shut a site or let a customer down. It then became this sort of 6 months of, well, it's not about high performance. It's about shepherding the team through this, coaching them through, and leading with way more ambiguity than frankly I've experienced in 30 years. Mm. So I think that was, to me, the learning. The other thing is, maybe you're going to expand on this, but we were very clear in the first week or two. I paused the team and got them to have discussions. It wasn't about PowerPoints or anything. It was about a discussion about what does good look like? Because this was clearly not going to be a month or 2 month thing. It's going to be at least 12, if not 18. What does good look like? And we agreed as a team and as a board that we were going to optimize 3 things. And then that helped change this ambiguity. The first is never let a customer down. Second is making sure that all of our staff were looked after and safe. And then the third thing is we were maniacally focused on making decisions that would ensure the bounce back of the company, and not make decisions that had some sort of placebo, using that terminology, but or sugar effect or short-term effect, and then a very big long-term effect. So, and I think this ambiguity point was really important for me in leading and changing the way I ran the business. But it's also having that really clear up front, what does good look like, help to improve the ambiguity.
That's brilliant. What a great conversation. That's fantastic. And you say those 3 things with such clarity, and they all sound so simple, and arguably some would say were so obvious. But to have got to that clarity that has such meaning for you, what were you sort of navigating in that process of even just naming that? So what does good look like, managing through this process? To be that objective actually in that moment of crisis is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, we also used it in lots of meetings. We're sitting there, and the thing I found also during March and April and May, and then it sort of was still prevalent in the last 6 months, but less fluid, is every day there seemed to be a new government change, or the virus had been done something different in Manchester versus Scotland or Northern Ireland, and there was such fluidity. In a crisis, sometimes, and I've had a number of around the world, crises in companies, that within a very short space of time, you can put a boundary around it and then start to work it. This, without using the pen, this sort of evolved and was fluid. And every day that we get on a call at 5 o'clock and say, what decisions do we need to make? Yeah. And actually, when you come down to it, we said, well, what's this seems the right decision, but is it good for the customer? Is it good for our team? And is it good for the bounce back? And there were quite a lot of decisions that squared that entire circle, but there were probably 70 or 80% of them that definitely didn't square all 3, and a number only hit one of them, and that's where it becomes difficult, right? So
how did you deal with that?
Well, it was sort of in that order. I mean, customers first, staff second, and then it's not about shareholders third, but it's more about the bounce back. The shareholders have got very supportive, running the company for the long term. So you put customers and staff first, then things take care of itself. Mm. There were a few cases where it had minimal impact on a customer or staff, but had a very high impact on the bounce back, and that you can sort of do it that way. But I think in the end, it helped us really work through those, because I found, unless you had the bounce back on the table, the teams sometimes also made easy decisions which cause significant impact, which are much harder to repair and much harder to fix later on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's to do with systems or locations or all these sort of things. But when you said, look, if we did it this certain way, you know, it might take a couple of days to implement. If we spent another few more days or whatever it is, the bounce back is significantly improved. And I think, again, I don't want to be wonky, but that really helped for myself and the teams to sort of make, frankly, lightning fast decisions in generally the absence of data or, you know, some analysis. You have to be quite entrepreneurial, you know, with these decisions.
Yeah, excellent. That's fantastic. It's like that still point in a spinning globe.
Yeah.
You could keep
coming. I mean, there were thousands of decisions we're making over these months, right?
Yeah.
You'd have a way longer period to consider, but in the end, you have to make the calls, right?
Yeah, yeah. Great. No, thank you, Charles. That's fantastic. During this time, I mean, you know, completely different ways of working, of course, as we know, across all organizations. You know, the need to, you know, manage through the commercial implications of everything that's happened. What's been in our focus on COVID, the pandemic, in your view, has been lost or is out of our peripheral awareness that we need to be alert to? Because when you're sort of obsessed about any one thing, or you're managing through a crisis, you know, the blinkers come in hard and off we go. But, you know, what's going on that we're not noticing, or that we're losing, maybe temporarily, but maybe even permanently. And that might be a good thing or a bad thing. But what's sort of out of range from that fierce focus in any way?
I think that again, there's time periods, right? So if we take we're in the UK, sort of that March to August time period, that there was this overwhelming sense about, isn't it amazing how we can all work from home? This is absolutely the future. And what got lost actually is, and I think, and I'll come back to that, and I think this has been a massive awakening of a more flexible working, which, by the way, has only really been a massive trend in the last 15 years. You can't work from home with sort of dial-up broadband or whatever it is, my old telco world. You can only do it with high-speed internet, right? So it's only been a really relatively recent trend. But I think what got lost actually is sort of a bit of the fundamentals of companies, to be honest, in the sort of the, I think, and again, going back to what I said earlier, is I think a number of senior leaders and boards were probably quite surprised how their companies can work with a vast majority of people working from home who never worked from home before. And I think that's been fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's what is lost is, I think, is more the basic question is it an innovative environment? Is it a productive environment? Does it lead to increased customer satisfaction so that you retain and build your market share? And getting back to real basics, does it drive competitive advantage? Because actually we're all running companies not for the next 2 or 3 years, but for decades. And if you are not innovative, you're not productive, you're not generating the customer sat, and you're not long-term competitive advantage, this grand experiment working from home is somewhat irrelevant, right? Because then the company doesn't survive. So I think, without getting sort of management speak, I love the fact that this has really broken some taboos, and for those leaders and managers in companies who need their teams around them, and they can be more flexible, and fantastic. You know, I think that has been the prize out of all of this. But I would say what's lost is coming back to, are you winning customers? Now, I know in certain business units in Restore that we have gained market share because there's been a bit of a flight to quality. So I think what's been sort of lost, and I know in Restore that we have not been as innovative this year, which is totally fine. You know, as I said, this is not high performance. This is about getting back to basics. But coming back out of this, CEOs and boards need to be focusing on innovation, productivity, putting the customer and saying, what did I learn out of this? How flexible was my business? Was it more digitally connected to customers?
Yeah.
Those organizations which were very digital, both in the way they operate and the way that they connect with customers, obviously were much more flexible. So I think that, I don't want to be negative about, this discussion about flexible working. I think it's terrific, but it's been too overwhelming in the messaging. We need to get back to, right, how do we harness this more flexible working? How digital was our business? And then, how can we use it to our advantage to take market share? Because that's what we need to do, right?
Yeah, excellent. So when you think about the future, Charles, and the gifts from this time, what it is that organizations must preserve from this time, because I'm talking to many leaders, so many in the early weeks were saying, we were making decisions in 2 days, making stuff happen in 2 days that we'd have swept 2 months, 6 months, whatever length of time. So, the cut through, for example, immense. From your perspective, what must be preserved in the way that organizations are led going forward?
Well, I come back to this it's a great question. The flexibility in digital businesses. In the end, have we replumbed our businesses in the last 6 to 9 months to be highly digital? No, we haven't. We have just made them work, right? With more people at home and changed some processes, investing in some technology. Over the next 10 years, I hope, again, boards and senior executives teams say, right, we need to be more flexible, right? Instead of just in a crisis be flexible, how do we embed it in the business? So investing in digital tools, investing in the flexible, the way the business is put together, and then come back to where we sort of started, leadership, right? I mean, the leaders who really could handle the ambiguity, sort of, push them forward, give them more responsibilities, and those that, maybe struggled a bit, obviously we're going to need to bring them along as well. So I think that what I hope is not lost is all the things that sort of broke glass and taught us things can be different. But then what I'd hope for companies going forward is it actually is going to be expensive and hard to really replumb and change a business to be more flexible and digital, and harness all the things that we have learned in a more structural way that works for customers. Because I probably, like you, I've phoned a lot of companies to my own personal, the house and insurance and all these other things, and some of them haven't even answered the telephone. Right? That's not working. That's not gaining market share. Some of them might have answered the telephone after 20 minutes. Well, that's not going to lead to long-term competitive advantage. So how do we harness all of that and turn it into a much, more structural? And that's actually the way the company works going forward. Yeah. That's what we're doing at Restore. We did not lose the opportunity over the last 9 months to transform parts of our business. Now, certainly March and April, I put that a little bit on hold. But again, I come back to this customer, staff, and bounce back. The bounce back for us was not losing the opportunity for the goals we set at the start of the year to transform the business. And I think there are about 70% of the things that we said in January we wanted to do. The teams got back into it and actually delivered most of those in the last sort of 8 months of the year.
Brilliant. And your point about digital and real investment in it, as opposed to just getting into survival mode, actually, because so many businesses, of course, have been leading through the crisis and sort of in a state of survival, but actually there's I love that phrase, actually, that plumbed in digital way of interacting with customers. And if the investment wasn't there in your business before, goodness me, there's some catch up, because anybody that had invested in having a digital relationship with their customer won, during this time, for sure. And like you, I've phoned companies and they just won't take calls. The message tells you firmly and cleanly, interact online, but then the online experience is it isn't. It was
obviously not set up in the last few years to cater with this volume or richness of interaction, right?
Exactly.
So, but this goes to the point about if companies haven't digitized themselves in the last 9 months, right? this is where I've talked to a number of people in industry and investors and a whole range of people that says, haven't we done a wonderful job digitizing our companies? Well, no, we sort of made them work.
Yeah.
Right. That's not driving sustainable competitive advantage. So I think, what we are going to be doing in the company is refocusing in on a whole range of digital, but not just digital, but flexible ways of being flexible in the company. And I think it's also, for me, I've been really delighted with the Restore 2,500 staff. Is they've been so receptive to change during this period. And we have really majored on the communication, which I know a lot of other companies would have done. In fact, our employee engagement has gone up in the last 6 months, which I'm sort of delighted with, because, but I think now we've got a team who were very pragmatic and receptive to change, even more so. So as a company, as we come through the first 6 months of next year and we're coming out of COVID, which seems absolutely the likelihood, is we're going to transform even more than we expected to in 2021, which I think is, if there was an unintended outcome, then that's a good thing for us.
So in terms of your leadership, as you said earlier, 30 years, how has this year forever changed you as a leader?
I think it's a great question. For me, I think leaders always need to be challenging themselves and dare I say, sort of transforming, but evolving and changing. Because as soon as a leader you sort of plateau, you then create this sort of rigid ceiling for your team. So you need to continually change. So I hope that that's what I've been doing certainly the last 20 years. The thing that I've really learned, and this might sound incredibly simplistic, but as someone who does drive transformation and pace and like driving performance with the team, is this has given me a huge amount of think time this year. It was after the first 2 months when I stood back and said, look, our goals are going to be different this year. We want to have a lot of standard. We want to deliver for customers and staff and the bounce back. But really, I am taking a bit of the foot off the accelerator. Actually gave me more think time. And I really enjoyed the think time of what am I going to do differently? What other leaders in the business do differently? And so I hope, and time will tell, maybe we'll talk in a year's time, Maggie, that time will tell that as we get back into more normalcy post-COVID, that I frankly keep above it and retain a bit more think time. Because I think for me, it's been better. I hope it's been better for the team, but I certainly think for the strategic health of Restore, having a bit more think time, you're talking 5-10%, not a huge amount, would help me be a better leader. It also helps you sort of slow down and listen a bit more, which is always a good thing.
And it's really interesting hearing you reflect on what that's meant for your leadership. And so what is it you need to put in place to actually retain that benefit of that think time? It's 5-10%, but it's made a heck of a difference. And I know, working with senior teams, that's so often the plight is, how do we get more think time together? How do we think into the future? Rather than the urgency of the day-to-day operation, which of course is important and needs to be attended to, but committing to that think time and it not being seen almost as action, is and has been a perpetual conflict, certainly in my experience of coaching top teams. So in the future it'll be interesting to come back to you, Charles, and
please ask. I should say, this is not just me in a vacuum as well, Maggie. I've got a wonderful team around me as well, so that they've allowed me to have more of that think time as well. But if you're asking a very personal question, that is to me been the learnings of this, is it's given me a little bit more time, and I want to make sure I preserve that going forward. Yeah, fantastic. I think it's been a year when so many people, whether leading an organization as you are, of course, or personally, have taken stock in different ways. A significant year.
Charles, thank you so much for your time today. It's wonderful to get your contribution to the Leadership Exchange, and thank you to those of you listening. If you would like to contribute to the Leadership Exchange, drop me a note in comments or contact me directly. It will be great to hear from you. But for now, Charles, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate talking to you.